Hello, my name's Raj Dutt, and I'm the co-founder and CEO at Grafana Labs. I want to extend a warm welcome to everyone to GrafanaCONline 2020, our first virtual GrafanaCon. It's really great to see so many people streaming in from all over the world. I hope everyone's feeling well, staying safe, and relatively sane. Personally speaking, I'm feeling three emotions today. I'm feeling nostalgic, I'm feeling stressed, but most of all, I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling nostalgic because GrafanaCon is always the time of year where we get to look back at where we've been, but it's especially nostalgic this year because we really miss getting people together in person. I'm feeling stressed because it's been a lot of work getting Grafana 7.0 out the door by the whole team. And at the same time, we're switching to this online virtual conference with the backdrop of the global pandemic. But most of all, I'm feeling excited. And this is the overriding emotion for me. I'm really excited that we can do this and get even more people together. And we've got lots of really cool stuff to share and reminisce on. I want to talk about our conferences, our community, and our company. So let's dive in. So when it comes to conferences, this is our 5th conference. Normally we pick a city and get the community together, but this is our biggest conference yet and our first virtual one. Now forget about testing-driven development. At Grafana Labs we do CDD, which we joke stands for conference-driven development. And what that means is, stress aside, we try to coincide GrafanaCon with a major release of Grafana. And obviously that's no different this year with Grafana 7.0, our most monumental release yet. So we've had 4 conferences so far in New York, in Amsterdam, and in Los Angeles. They've all been unique, they've all been growing, and they've all coincided with a major release of Grafana. Let's take a quick trip down memory lane. Our first conference in 2015, probably unfair to call a conference. It was more of a glorified meetup. Squarespace was kind enough to donate their offices for our venue, and we got about 50 people together to talk about Grafana. It was really fun. You can see our 2 posters there, democratize metrics, don't get in the way of the data. Torkel will talk more about that on this session. Our next conference was truly spectacular, especially as far as the venue went. Have you ever been to a conference on an aircraft carrier? I hadn't until GrafanaCon 2016, which we held on board the USS Intrepid in New York City. We launched Grafana 4.0 at GrafanaCon 2016, and I got to combine 2 of my favorite things, open source software and airplanes. So a year and change later, we finally brought GrafanaCon to the West Coast and launched Grafana 5.0. You can see that year, 2018, was the last year that we managed to fit the whole company on one stage. We outgrew that by the next year. It was a really fun conference. It was actually one of the coldest days on record in Amsterdam in a number of years. So we were all freezing, and a bunch of us almost didn't make our flights thanks to snowstorms all over Europe. But a really memorable conference for sure. And then finally, our last and most recent conference, GrafanaCon Los Angeles last year. You can see there Torkel on stage in a cape celebrating the release of Grafana 6.0, which was our last major release. I don't think Torkel's going to be wearing a cape at this GrafanaCon. In fact, I'm not even sure if he'll be wearing pants. And so that brings us to today, GrafanaCONline. What was to be isn't to be. We were looking forward to returning to Amsterdam this year. In fact, we were really anticipating welcoming many of you who are on the stream now to the same venue that we did in 2018, but it wasn't to be. The venue's still intact, but totally empty today, obviously, with the situation globally and in the Netherlands. But that's okay. GrafanaCONline is going to be awesome. It's free of charge. And we've done some changes in terms of how we've structured it. Instead of doing 2-day sessions, each 7 hours, we split it up over 2 weeks. And we've got the same great sessions, the same great talks, and you can tune in to them, whatever talks you find interesting. And if you miss any, don't worry, we've got you covered. All the talks will be recorded and made available on demand later at no charge. And this is our first remote virtual conference. So it's a learning experience for us. If you've got any suggestions on how we can make it better, let us know on Slack. And like everything in Grafana Labs, we'll evolve and iterate. So now I want to talk about our community. Our community is like our superpower at Grafana Labs. We're lucky enough to be the stewards of a very large and vibrant community that's constantly pushing Grafana in different directions, helping us build better software, opening pull requests, bug fixes, documentation changes. And it's always fun to look back over the last year and see some of the interesting things that the community has been up to. So let's take a look back. Now, I know this is a depressing topic, but it's obviously front and center for a lot of people. And there's been some interesting dashboards that have come about in the last few weeks around COVID. So this one's created by a friend at F5 Networks, and I have this set to New York. And you can see the breakdown by county and the progression of COVID in New York State. Some really nice usage of the bar graphs, great dashboard overall. And if you zoom in to some of the geo maps, you can see the confirmed COVID cases across the United States. I know this is a depressing visualization, but you'll have to also agree that it's a really awesome visualization and a very telling and beautiful one. This is all powered with the world map panel that's built into Grafana, and on the back end, they're using Prometheus as the data source. Really cool stuff. Here's another one from Cyberbits, and I've got this set to Sweden, Torkel's home country. And this is an interesting dashboard. They've got good use of some single stats and pie charts and spark lines showing relative proportions, new confirmed cases, active cases, really good stuff from Cyberbits. So electric vehicles is something that we've seen a huge uptick in the community in the last few years. On the left, you'll see a Nissan Leaf, and Ed Welsh has a really fun presentation on how he brought Grafana literally into his Nissan Leaf. And on the right, you'll see a Tesla Model 3. That's actually my girlfriend's Model 3 in upstate New York. And the community has been up to some really interesting stuff. So let's take a look. So here's a post by Rhodesman, and he says, after 5 months, I've finished Powerwall dashboard. Here it is in all its glory. I agree, it looks pretty glorious. You can see he's tracking his historical output over time, his solar output, battery health, and this is data around his Powerwall. And the same project also helps you track your Tesla vehicles. And so you can see he's got historical output for solar, battery, grid, his house, all tied together with a Powerwall, good single stats with custom colors and thresholds. Really nice dashboard by Rhodesman, good job. And here's another post by Sean Yi, first project of the quarantine. He spooled up a server and is tracking the data from his Model 3 with an open source project you can find on GitHub called TeslaMate. This is another really cool dashboard showing the states of his car over time, whether it's asleep, online, driving, updating, showing battery levels, charging voltage. Really nice job there, Sean. Weather and environmentals is another item that our community is pretty obsessive about tracking, both outside and inside. So let's look at some of the interesting things over the last year in weather and environmentals. So Multium has used an Arduino to make a weather station which shows his indoor and outdoor temperature, indoor carbon dioxide level, and atmospheric pressure. It also sends the data over Wi-Fi to InfluxDB and of course displays it in Grafana. By the way, InfluxDB is a super popular database within the Grafana community and really excels at these kind of use cases. So here's a picture of Multium's Arduino device, and here's the dashboard that he's visualizing. Really nice custom thresholds, helping him monitor his indoor air quality, carbon dioxide levels, temperature, things like that. Really nice job. Here's a post by Jesse Collins. He set up a sensor to monitor his Melbourne air quality with a Raspberry Pi, also going into InfluxDB, all solar powered. Impressive. So let's take a look at Jesse's dashboard. Here's the device. It's a Raspberry Pi with a sensor, and the dashboard itself helps monitor air quality. And he's done some really interesting stuff with the single stats. He's used the value to text mapping. So instead of displaying a number, it displays a string. And so it just shows good when his air quality and particulate matter is within the green threshold. Really nice stuff, Jesse. Home labs are another area that our community is really into. And it's pretty common for Grafana users to have either a storage array or a Plex server or even an entire Kubernetes cluster at home. So let's take a look. Here's a post by Orange Joe 3000. He says he's got a Grafana dashboard, Plex server monitoring nearly complete. Would like to add a few more things, but I'm not sure how. How do you have your dashboard set up? Wow, well I think Orange Joe has quite the dashboard set up. Maybe he needs some help, but he looks like a Grafana expert. He's really made this his own. He's got a custom theme going on, tracking things like CPU usage, memory usage, who's playing what from where, You can see the location map shows where people are streaming from, how many movies he has, how many TV shows he has. Really good job here. And I think with Grafana 7.0, there's definitely some things that would really come into play that would just make this dashboard really fly, but really nice job. Here's another post by That French Kid 96. He says, a lot of people have been showing off their Grafana dashboard, so here's the one I made in quarantine. I guess with quarantine, some of us have some time on our hands, but this looks super impressive. He's also completely themed Grafana, nice usage of the new bar charts that exist in Grafana 6, monitoring CPU temperature, CPU usage, and even things like download and upload speed, ping rates. And you can see he's monitoring drive temperatures, chances of drive failures. That's pretty impressive. And of course, TV stats and media stats. Looks like he has over 200 movies and over 1,000 skydiving videos. Wow, that French kid must really like skydiving. Here's another post. Bad G Coop, just a few days ago, says 3 weeks of playing with Grafana. My vitals dashboard is complete. Looks really impressive. It's clear that a lot of work has gone into this. So he's got AT&T data usage, Comcast data usage. He's looking at temperatures of his fridge. I can see he's looking at garage freezer temperature, kitchen freezer temperature. Looks like he's tracking a lot of different things. Lots of really nice custom thresholds. Speed test on the bottom, tracking his internet quality over time. I guess a lot of people care a lot about their home internet quality these days, but really good job here. And then totally random, bees. The Hive-Eyes project are developing a flexible beehive monitoring infrastructure platform on affordable hardware. And Matthias from the Hive-Eyes project will be speaking about this more next Wednesday, but here's a sneak peek at one of their dashboards. Now, I don't speak German, so I can't really interpret this for you, but it's clear that they're monitoring things like humidity, wind speed, temperature, and they've even got some visualizations that are showing when the humidity is above 70%. Cool stuff. So now I want to talk a little bit about the company and what we've been up to and where we've come. So like all the other sections, let's talk a little bit about yesterday. So I can't talk too much about the history of Grafana Labs without talking about our co-founders. So Anthony Woods is our Chief Technology Officer. He's based in Perth, Australia. There's Anthony on the left. The two of us are standing outside the New York Stock Exchange, and this was the day that New Relic went public. New Relic's a company that we really admire. I was lucky enough to have dinner with their CEO and co-founder, Lou Cern. And if you want to connect New Relic to Grafana, you can do so with the enterprise New Relic data source. On the right, you see Anthony asleep. This is a side effect of doing conference-driven development. I have a feeling he's like this today, but join him tomorrow for his presentation on Worldping, which will help you monitor your own internet quality. And of course, the man of the hour, my co-founder and our chief Grafana officer and the creator of the Grafana project, Torkel Odegaard. Torkel's based in Stockholm, Sweden. And do you know what his name means in Swedish? Thor's helmet. And he thinks that's pretty cool, but it could also mean Thor's kettle. So I don't know which one's cooler. And do you know why Grafana is spelt with an F? It was one of the first questions I asked Torkel. And for the answer, you'll have to call him on the F-O-N-E and ask him. And here's a hint. They don't use PH in Sweden. They use F. So you have Torkel's Swedish heritage to thank for the strange spelling of Grafana. And so in 2015, the three of us were on 3 different continents, North America, Europe, and Australia. And this laid the foundation for our post-geographical culture. We're a remote-first company, not a remote-friendly company. And this means that we're fully distributed. We don't require anyone to come into an office ever. And this allows us to find the best talent in the world, wherever it is. And it's also in line with the communities that we participate in. Open source communities have always been global and always been distributed and always been run independently of geopolitical boundaries. And that's the kind of company that we're trying to build at Grafana Labs. So initially, our business plan had a lot of holes in it. We figured if we created fantastic open source software and built an amazing team and nurtured a large and vibrant community, that the rest would follow. But we soon figured out and realized that we'd need to come up with a plan for making money and making Grafana Labs a sustainable company, and the Grafana project a sustainable open source project too. So here's a look back, 2016, our first offsite summit in a cabin in upstate New York. There was 6 feet of snow outside, so we were all trapped inside, locked inside a room, figuring out how to launch our first product. And so we launched it in 2016 at the end of the year, and that was Grafana Enterprise. Grafana Enterprise is really oriented at meeting the needs of the largest companies in the world. And it's everything you know of Grafana, open source, but we add in 24/7, 365 support, indemnification, roadmap assurance, and also add a layer of data sources such as Oracle, Splunk, Datadog, New Relic, AppDynamics, Dynatrace, ServiceNow that really appeal to the largest companies in the world. And we also add in certain features around authentication and security. So Grafana Enterprise was our first product and remains a foundation of Grafana Labs. And of course, I can't talk about our history without talking about the Graphite project. The Graphite project was what Grafana started around. It was the original time series database, and it was created by Orbitz back in 2006. And we found that many Grafana users were really using Graphite and really loving it. But the project had kind of stagnated by 2016. So what we did is we hired Jason Dixon, who was the unofficial maintainer of the project, and he worked with key Grafana Labs people such as Dan Check, and we got a Graphite 1.0 release out the door in 2016. And this was long overdue, but it added lots of key features such as tags, and many people continue to use Graphite today. But around 2015, 2016, a new time series database came on the horizon. We hadn't really heard about it before, and I am, of course, talking about the Prometheus project. And so in 2015, we invited some of the Prometheus developers to our first GrafanaCon. And there's a picture of Tobias Schmidt, a production engineer at SoundCloud, where Prometheus was born, talking about how Grafana had now integrated with the Prometheus project. Now, we hadn't really heard too much about the Prometheus project at the time, and little did we know that over the subsequent years, it would grow and explode in popularity to become what it is today, which is the most popular database within the Grafana community. And it was this rise in popularity of Prometheus that caused us to want to invest in the Prometheus ecosystem, because we really considered Prometheus to be complementary to the Grafana project. So in 2018, at GrafanaCon Amsterdam, we announced that we were acquiring a small company in Europe called Causal. And so the two co-founders of Causal are Tom Wilkie in the center, who's now our VP of Product, and David Kalschmidt on the right, who's now our Director of User Experience. And the visions of Causal and Grafana Labs were so aligned that back in 2018, we decided to join forces. So you'll be hearing from Tom Wilkie later on in this session, talking about Grafana Cloud. And he's been instrumental in helping Grafana Labs achieve a leadership position within the Prometheus community. We're one of the top contributors and are really trying to help drive the Prometheus project forward. And so Grafana Cloud was the second project and product that we launched. And it's unlike any other SaaS platform. And it allows our customers to bring together all our open source software from Grafana to Loki to Prometheus to Graphite, and have a composable observability stack that we run, we maintain, and we scale. And so unlike many other SaaS offerings, there's no vendor lock-in, and you can continue to connect all your existing data sources through Grafana without requiring any sort of data import. And of course, Grafana Cloud is priced on a data volume level rather than a per host level. So that brings us to today. 2 products later, we're 140 people in 25 countries. And we recently made Inc. Magazine's Best Workplace of 2020. We have over 1,000 paying customers, ranging from $49 a month Grafana Cloud customers to Grafana Enterprise customers who are paying us over $1 million a year. And last year, we did our first institutional fundraise of $24 million, and we did it on our terms. We were operating at cash flow break even, and we managed to find some partners and investors that really shared our vision in community and open source. We have some really nice growth metrics that I'll share with you all during my session on the business of Grafana Labs. And most importantly, Grafana Labs is now so much more than just Grafana itself. And we have a new filled out business plan too, and it centers around the 2 products that I told you about, Grafana Enterprise and Grafana Cloud. And through these products, we hope to delight our customers by letting them set their own observability strategy. And by setting their own observability strategy, I mean our big tent philosophy, which is key to Grafana Labs. And what that really means is we value interoperability over consolidation. We're not the kind of vendor that will ask you to rip and replace all your other best-of-breed solutions and have to consolidate all your data into a single vendor or single database. Instead, we connect to your data wherever it lives, whether it's through projects that we're associated with, like Graphite or Prometheus or Loki, or through other vendors and projects like Elasticsearch or InfluxDB or Jaeger or New Relic or Datadog. We really believe that our customers deserve choice to set their own observability strategy, and we're all about respecting your existing choices and investments. And we believe that by bringing your data together across all these different tools and vendors, we can create better understanding and better context that ultimately help you achieve your business goals. So join me for my Business of Grafana session later on in GrafanaCONline. I'll talk more about our products and strategy and dive deeper into our metrics, including our revenue metrics. I'll also give you a glimpse into our goals for next year. But in the meantime, I leave you in the capable hands of our VP of Product and my friend Tom Wilkie, who will talk more about Grafana Cloud and how it ties all our open source projects together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raj. Hey everyone, how you doing? My name's Tom. As Raj said, I'm the VP Product at Grafana Labs and the co-creator of Cortex. And I'm going to take 10 minutes to talk to you a bit about Grafana Cloud and some of the open source projects we use to build the service. Grafana Cloud is a collection of open source projects that we run for you on a series of Kubernetes clusters around the world. We've taken some of the best, what we think are the best at least, open source projects and combined them to give you kind of an observability platform that integrates really closely with Grafana and allows you to pick and choose the best components. So the first component I want to talk about is Loki. Loki is our take on log aggregation. It has a focus on being closely integrated with Prometheus. We want to combine Prometheus's metadata and service discovery system with a really similar and really familiar query language. We focused on easy operations. Loki doesn't index your logs. This makes it easy to scale. It makes it really cheap to run. We've also focused on a single, highly scalable binary that can be deployed in a kind of airplane mode with no dependencies, but also run as a set of microservices that can use cloud native storage and allow you to do things like independently scale the read and write path. So we launched Loki at KubeCon in Seattle in November 2018. We had a really positive result from the community, and it was really kind of surprising and great to see. The team we built around Loki put a really Herculean effort into getting Loki to GA 1 year later at KubeCon in San Diego. And it's particularly memorable KubeCon because it was a very, very wet and the conference center leaked. So we now see over 10,000 active installs of Loki, the open source project. We also see over 500 terabytes a month of data being pushed to the Loki and Grafana Cloud. And I'm really pleased with the progress of this project. If some of you haven't seen Loki before, I've got a quick video demo I'd like to show you. So let's just let it load. There we go. So this is a dashboard we've got showing a simple 3-tier microservice. We can actually use the Grafana Explore, which was launched in 6.0, to see the query behind that and quickly kind of drill down into the error we're looking for. And then we can instantly switch to the logs for that error. And this is really powerful. This means during a kind of instant response workflow, you don't have to manually translate queries between your different backends. It reduces the number of errors you can introduce and really helps kind of shorten that mean time to recovery. So quickly moving on, the next project is one really close to my heart. This is Cortex, a project I started almost 4 years ago with Julius from the Prometheus project. Cortex aims to build a horizontally scalable, highly available, multi-tenant version of Prometheus. You can think of it as a clustered version of Prometheus. Why horizontally scalable? Well, we wanted to make it so that a single Cortex cluster could handle a virtually infinite number of metrics, allowing you to bring all the raw samples from all of your different data centers distributed all around the world into one place. This allows you to run queries on those raw samples and run the kind of ad hoc queries you have to do when investigating issues, and do them on all the data at once. And this is really important because this is actually quite a challenging problem. You know, when you've got hundreds of millions of series, running aggregations over them quickly is hard. So we've invested a lot of time and effort in making PromQL blazing fast. We've used techniques such as caching and a really aggressive parallelization and sharding. So effectively, we've turned every little PromQL query into a tiny little instantaneous MapReduce. It's a really powerful technique. We've also deployed kind of Dynamo-style replication to give you a kind of high availability that doesn't leave gaps in the graphs when you have server failures. And finally, we've taken the opportunity to centralize your data and give you a place for long-term storage. So leveraging things like DynamoDB, Bigtable, and Cassandra, we can actually store a virtually infinite amount of data. And this allows you to compare today's state of your system with yesterday, with last week, with last month, last year, if you've been using it long enough, even last decade. I'm really proud to announce that Cortex hit the major 1.0 milestone in April, after we've been running it in production for almost 3 years. This is really about signaling that we think Cortex is ready for production usage by other people, and not just by us and the maintainers. We wrote some production docs, we open sourced our production configuration, our dashboards, our alerts, and we've really kind of made it, I think, a really exciting project. Cortex is now powering over 60 trillion samples a month in Grafana Cloud. I think this is probably one of the largest Cortex installations in the world. Grafana Labs employs 5 of the 8 Cortex maintainers, and I just want to give a shout out to Gotham, Jacob, Marco, Peter, and also Brian, Ken, and Chris. Without them, we couldn't have made this possible. One of the things we did as 1.0 is we went out and talked to some of the users of Cortex outside of kind of the maintainer's sphere. And one of the really interesting case studies is Gojek, an Indian company helping you book motorcycle taxis. It's now a massive company doing all sorts of different projects like a wallet, dinner bookings, you name it. And they use Cortex at massive scale to develop kind of an internal observability as a service platform. It's a really interesting case study. Finally, I wanted to give you a shout out at some of the stuff that's coming up in the future for Cortex. We're developing a embedded UI inside Grafana for managing Cortex alerts. These are Prometheus-style alerts, but with a full kind of read-write UI. I think this is going to be really exciting. The next project I wanted to talk about is Grafana's Metric Tank. So Metric Tank was our first scalable time series database at Grafana Labs. And this one, instead of being Prometheus compatible, this one's Graphite compatible. We use this to power Grafana Cloud's Graphite service to tune about 3.5 trillion samples a month. It uses Go, Kafka, Cassandra, Bigtable, runs on Kubernetes. And recently the focus has been on the community. So adopting a new governance, this snazzy new logo, monthly community calls, generally really rounding the product off. One of the things I'm particularly excited about is that the Metric Tank team have been collaborating with the Grafana team for the 7.0 release and help kind of populate this new inspect panel. So if you're querying Metric Tank, you can go and see what rollups were used to build that query, how long they took, and this kind of stuff. It's really exciting. You can do the same with Loki, and we're hoping to build the same for Prometheus soon. I wanted to introduce a couple of new projects you might not have heard of yet. So the first project we introduced about a month ago is the Grafana Cloud Agent. This is a lightweight, scalable agent for Grafana Cloud, but particularly built on open source software and using open protocols. We've actually vendored the Prometheus code base and reused the code, reused service discovery, reused the scraping code, and reused the remote write. So you can use Grafana Cloud Agent to send to any Prometheus remote write compatible system. What we've done is basically removed local storage and made the agent stateless. This means in a really large Kubernetes cluster, you don't really need a kind of dedicated Prometheus node anymore. It really answers kind of one of our customers' biggest questions about why do I still need to run a Prometheus if we're giving you a hosted Prometheus. It makes it operationally much more kind of consistent with how you're used to deploying monitoring inside large organizations. So this kind of agent model instead of kind of the cluster local monitoring. And hopefully this will also make Grafana Cloud easier to get started with. The asterisks on Loki and Graphite because we actually haven't built those in yet. But our plan in the future is to bundle more and more open source agents into the Grafana Cloud Agent so that you've got only a single thing you need to deploy. Worldping v2, we're really excited about this. Worldping is our service for finding problems before your customers do. So you can think of this as kind of a hosted black box exporter where we will ping your website, store the results of that probe in Cortex and in Loki, and allow you to kind of see, oh, maybe my website was down from Asia, maybe it was slow from Europe. Worldping v2 is the reimagining on top of Cortex and Loki and using open standards like the Prometheus black box exporter. We're also going to change it so that you're no longer charged for checks. You're only going to be billed based on the data that gets written to Cortex and Loki. Anthony's going to be giving a talk about this tomorrow, I believe. So tune in if you want to find out more. Anthony also shared with me this really cool dashboard that kind of, we're monitoring our own website with Worldping, obviously. And we can kind of see, when it's slow, what happens when the kind of pings time out. And one of the things I'm particularly excited about with Worldping v2 is the Loki aspect of it. We can actually store the logs from each probe in Loki. And this will allow you to see things that you previously couldn't see in a purely metrics-based solution. So this would be things like what the domain name resolved to, what the DNS name was, and what the IP address it resolved to was. You'll be able to hopefully eventually see things like trace routes, see the route that it took to get to your website. And this is all enabled by having that kind of log aggregation store in Loki. I just wanted to show the pricing tiers we've got for Grafana Cloud now. We've got a free starter tier, which allows you to get access to a hosted Grafana and start playing with it. Then we've got this standard tier, and we've recently introduced a 30-day free trial for this standard tier. This allows you to start getting a flavor for what it looks like to have all your logs and all your metrics in one place, twinned with Grafana. One of the things we're working on is a Grafana Enterprise tier as well, which allows you to get some of the features of Grafana Enterprise as part of Grafana Cloud. If you want to find out more about any of the projects I've talked about, we've got some great talks coming up over the next week or so. Anthony's tomorrow talking about Worldping. Gotham will be talking about what's coming in the Prometheus project. Ed and Cyril on Loki, and Dieter on Metric Tank. So I would encourage you to join some of those talks. So that's a little sneak peek into what we've been up to at Grafana Labs. Thank you for listening to me, but really you weren't here to listen to me. So without further ado, over to Torkel in Sweden.
Okay, let's get into Grafana and look at some history and contrast that to how it is today, and then take a look at what's in store for tomorrow and Grafana 7.0. Starting with the origins of Grafana. So for me, it all started with Graphite and kind of seeing the applications and services that my team were building come alive through graphs and these dashboards we were building with Graphite. It was really eye-opening to me to kind of see the impact of changes come alive through these graphs. And it kind of really changed how we developed software to be more scientific and data-driven. And if you're not familiar with Graphite or StatsD, they deserve a huge credit, in my view, of making metrics and dashboarding and monitoring not just be for infrastructure and networking, but be about application and user behavior. And I think tools like Graphite and StatsD kind of helped bring developers closer to operations and vice versa, and in a way kind of helped kickstart the DevOps movement. Anyway, this was my entry point into this space. And another thing that really kind of caught my eye and was super inspiring was this blog post on the Etsy blog called Measure Anything, Measure Everything. It has this great opening line, if engineering at Etsy has a religion, it's the church of graphs. In this blog post, they kind of announced StatsD, but also really kind of laid out the value of instrumenting your applications and services, and kind of the beauty of the graphs you can then derive from them. So yeah, it was really eye-opening to me to just kind of be able to write a single line of code in the application and then get almost real-time graphs and insight into what was going on in production. I really fell in love with this stuff back then. But so why did I create Grafana then? Well, the UI for building this dashboard and interacting with it wasn't that great, especially sort of the query editors versus this small text box that you couldn't really. It was really hard to reason and understand the query in the small text box, and you couldn't interact with the graphs at all. So I really struggled getting other people on my team to adopt this and build dashboards on their own. But at the same time, we were also starting to use Kibana 3 to build kind of log dashboards. And it had a great UI for building dashboards, and the graphs were interactive. It was an amazing piece of software, and I took that as a starting point and took it in a slightly different direction. I wanted something a little bit more stripped down with less icons and buttons that placed the data front and center. I also wanted to make the process of writing queries and understanding and sort of reasoning about queries easier. So I put in a lot of effort on making the query editors sort of really awesome and easy, so to make the query editing experience much better. So yeah, those were two fundamental things that I really put a lot of effort into, and they became the foundation of the two sort of posters we created as a company as well early on, in the don't get in the way of the data and democratize metrics. A coin we kind of term to highlight the fact of, or to emphasize in the process of making tools and data accessible and easy to learn for everyone. Anyway, let me get on to kind of how it is today. And it's 6 years later. I've been working on this project now. In fact, later this year, it's going to be 7 years I've been working on this. And it's been an enormous privilege to be the shepherd of Grafana all these years. The first year, it was only me working full-time on the project. I quickly kind of hired two really good friends, Daniel and Carl here, and this is the office back in 2015, working from my home. But it's pretty different now. Grafana, the last couple of years, has gotten pretty big. The adoption rate or the adoption has been such insane for Grafana, and we as a company has kind of grown with it. So just to give you a sense of that, we have this anonymous usage reports that give us sort of a sense of how many Grafana servers are running out there. This is something many turn off, but some leave it on. And just by this number, we have seen more than a doubling in the number of Grafana servers running out there. And the same can be sort of true. The same is true for the Grafana team. We're now far from 3 people like we were back in 2015. We're now well over 30, spread across multiple teams working just on Grafana development and data sources. And yeah, super excited to see all the great things all these talented people do every day to make Grafana better. Just to give you another sense of kind of the activity that goes on, this is just a snapshot from a period of April to May, just from the Grafana main Grafana repo. We have many other repositories as well, but we had 568 pull requests merged by 71 contributors. And the cool thing to highlight there is that about half those contributors, or more than half maybe, is from open source kind of external, not employed by Grafana Labs contributors that probably are trying to improve Grafana on their free time. So a huge thanks to everyone who's opened a pull request, opened an issue, given feedback. Yeah, without any of you, Grafana would not be what it is today. Speaking of today, or speaking rather of tomorrow and Grafana 7.0, I'm super excited to sort of start sharing about Grafana 7.0. It's just around the corner. It's already out in beta, and I have a full talk on Grafana 7.0 next Monday, where I'll sort of spend the full talk just digging deep into Grafana 7, doing tons of demos, and talk a little bit about the design process and thinking behind changes. But I don't want to leave you empty-handed. I have a demo in store for you here and now to highlight one of the key changes we've done in Grafana 7. So let me switch tab here and we'll break out of the slides and do a live demo for you. So let's log in. I've prepared a little custom home dashboard here that highlights some of the big changes in Grafana 7. Not all. There are things here that we're gonna cover later as well. And in this demo, I'm only gonna cover actually this new panel editor that we've built, because it shows so many things that are kind of exciting in this release and that we'll build on for the future as well. So let's kind of dive into the new edit mode. So as you can see, we have changed some stuff again. If you remember, we did actually change the panel edit UI in version 6 as well, but we weren't super happy where we ended up. Because especially around the display settings for panels, it was really hard to make that easy to set up and configure and make consistent between panels. And we felt like sort of having the visualization settings in the side pane would make it a lot easier to create a consistent UI for panel settings. And we have spent a lot of time also to kind of rework the form styles. So the form styles are new in Grafana, and we haven't updated them to this new form style in all places yet. But for the panel settings and in a few other places, they are now updated. So let's jump over to another dashboard here and look at a real panel here. So as you can see, both of these settings panes can be resized. I can even collapse the side pane to only focus on the query area here, or if I want to only focus on the settings, I can do that. Let's switch some settings here. You can sort of see the new form styles in actions here, we really tried. The goal here has been to make the panel editing experience easier. So the new form styles shows descriptions for options that kind of need it. We also split up the options a bit and now have this field tab where it's all about the data options. So in the panel tab, you have options that are related to the whole panel, to the whole visualization. But in the field tab, it's about the data options like unit, min and max that govern all the series or fields in the display. So if I change the max property here, for example, to 200, you can see all the different gauges here change with that change. But if I want to change the max for a specific series here, I can do that now in the overrides tab. So the overrides tab is a completely new thing in Grafana that tries to unify the concept of kind of series overrides that you've seen in the graph before, or the column styles that you've seen in the table panel. This is now a unified concept that will work across all the panels in the future in Grafana, and it will work both with time series data and columns or table data. So let me show you that and provide an override rule here where I say for, let's say, the second here, backups 2, I want to set the max property. And you can see now that if I set this to 58, it will move only that. Or if I set it to something really high, you can see that it only impacts that change, that series. And I can now even set, I can change the unit to something else. Maybe this is I can change unit. I could change anything here. I could change the number of decimals that I want this to be displayed with. I could, I don't know what else to do. I could set custom thresholds. I can specify some other threshold rules here. Maybe I want this to be go red to green instead, or red to yellow. So I can then specify that, and as you can see, this series now have a custom threshold specified. And the cool thing here is that if I change the visualization now to, let's say, the gauge and look at this second series here, I can see that it has this custom unit applied. It has this custom thresholds applied. So that will be carried over. And another thing that I want to highlight here is that if I change to the graph panel, you can see that this is actually time series that are being visualized here. And if I switch to the table panel, it only show one of the series here because they are actually sort of separate things. All the time series have a separate time field, for example. But I can use this new concept of a transform to combine all these time series into one table using a join. So now we are joining this, and now we have a kind of more regular time table structure because I've joined all the time series together, creating a normal looking table here. But you can see that this override rule I had is still being applied to this backend ops. And this is kind of the key thing here, is that these overrides work kind of transparently with time series data, with table data. You don't have to think that much about the difference anymore, because Grafana has this unified model that unifies both time series and table data and have a consistent way to set options on both. This override concept also works with custom display options. So in the table panel, you can see that it has some new options here that I can set on using overrides. So I could set a display mode here, for example, and specify gradient gauge. And let's remove this custom unit, and let's make this a bit bigger, and let's do this maybe, and set this to threshold to something like that. And I can see, so I have a special custom display option for this column here. So this is super easy for plugin authors as well to add these custom field level options that will automatically be kind of available to specify as well using an override rule. There's a ton more here to dig into, especially the transforms feature and much more about the kind of the underlying data model and how what this will enable both in 7.0 but in the future. So, but for that, I will have to kind of leave you hanging a bit, and you'll have to wait for the full Grafana 7 talk next Monday. So let's go to Slack for questions.